Hi guys, Derek Chauvin got convicted in second and third degree murder and second degree manslaughtering of George Floyd. This is truly shocking news for someone like me who was watching the whole trial from the beginning to the end. My expectation was that he would be acquitted or got the lowest possible charge, which is second degree manslaughtering. Why? Because the evidence is simply not there. But the woke jury decided otherwise. Probably most of you didn't watch the whole trial, so let me explain what actually happened there. You all know that George Floyd was arrested because he used $20 bill to purchase cigarettes, and the left told us that this is so cruel and inadequate to arrest him for such a minor offense, and he might not even know that he was using that fake $20 bill. The whole story is apparently way more complex than I thought. George Floyd was in a car with the man called Morris, who was his official drug dealer, according to the statement of Floyd's girlfriend. So Morris went to the store first and tried to use this fake $20 bill. And then the clerk told him that, oh, sorry man, this is fake, and he was not able to purchase anything. After a little while, Morris gave this $20 to Floyd and asked him to go to the store and buy cigarettes. At this time, George Floyd was extremely high, and it's confirmed by all the surveillance cameras in the store and the clerk's statement. This time, Floyd managed to buy cigarettes using $20 fake bill and immediately walk away from the store. The clerk realized that this is fake $20 bill, and he decided to walk out from the store after maybe like a minute and go to the Floyd's car. At that point, Floyd was sleeping or untalkative at the driver's seat. So the only person he could talk with was this drug dealer Morris. And the clerk asked him to return cigarettes because the bill is fake. And Morris basically refused. So the clerk went back to the store and took another employee with him, and they went for the second time to the Floyd's car. The situation was similar. Floyd was unresponsive and they had to talk to Morris. This time, Morris dropped another $20 bill to them, and they took it, and it was also fake. And they told him that, man, this is another fake, give us the cigarettes. And Morris decided to rip apart this bill into two parts. Then the clerks returned to the store and called for the police. Two things are extremely important here. First, they were intentionally using fake bills. And the second, that Floyd was so high that he possessed a public threat in case he would start to drive. Drug dealer Morris realized that police is about to come, so he started to wake up Floyd so that they can drive away, but unsuccessfully. Then, when the police arrived, Floyd managed to take two different pills of methamphetamine and fentanyl so that he can avoid charges for drug possession. We know about this because the investigation found two semi-used pills spitted in the police squad car, and they all had DNA of George Floyd. This is very important because it means that Floyd was already intoxicated and he got an extra dose right before the arrest. Then Floyd got handcuffed, started to cry, and went together with the police to the squad car. Then he refused to go inside the squad because he was claustrophobic. The police officer started to push him inside the car, and he started to struggle. And this is the moment when Chauvin actually came to the scene and started to intervene. During that confrontation, Floyd managed to smash his nose and throw away the officer's showing body camera. Luckily, the other officers' body cams were on and recording everything, and I recommend everyone to go and watch all of them to get your own opinion. So now Floyd is screaming and extremely aggressive, and officers trying to pacify him by putting him on the ground and fully restrain his moves. In the same time, they are calling for the ambulance because of bleeding nose of George Floyd. Now the problematic part starts, when Floyd is no longer resistant. The prosecution argued that at this point it's an excessive force and this has actually caused the Floyd's death. Now look, if Chauvin followed the police protocol and this caused Floyd's death, then he is acquitted. And if Chauvin didn't follow the protocol and the death was caused by, let's say, overdose, then Chauvin is acquitted as well. So it's important to prove both of these parts. Now let's see the actual arguments. First, kneeling on the Floyd's neck. If you watch the original video, you might say it's obviously a violation, I've seen it, he was sitting on his neck. If you look at the videos from different angles, it's quite clear that most of the showing weight is going on his back knee, which is put on Floyd's back. And his front knee is just trying to prevent Floyd's head movements. The most important piece of evidence which supports this idea is the testimony of Dr. Andrew Baker, who did the autopsy. Basically, he did an extensive work around the neck of George Floyd, and he couldn't find any signs of bruising or any scratches or anything, like nada. Then they asked Dr. Baker, is it common not to see any sign of strangulation? And he replied that no, usually you see some bruising, some scratches, but in case there are no marks, he still can't formally exclude the possibility of strangulation. Because neck compression is kind of challenged, the prosecution found another way how Floyd might have died, and they're arguing that this prone position, along with handcuffs, along with force which Chauvin applied to Floyd's back, that could reduce his oxygen intake because he couldn't properly exhale and inhale with his chest. And because of lack of oxygen, his brain eventually died. And there was a very convincing statement from the pulmonologist Dr. Chauvin. He explained theoretically how this strangulation is possible and how it's possible theoretically that there are no signs in his body of an injury or in his brain. The main problem with his testimony that although it is possible, it's very unlikely that you have that kind of strangulation leaving absolutely no signs on the body. Now you have Dr. Baker, who did the actual autopsy, and he was arguing that Floyd had a pretty significant underlying conditions. First, the Floyd's heart was much larger than it's supposed to be. Second, he had serious narrowing of arteries. Both of these preconditions requires significantly more oxygen to function. In addition, you have adrenaline, which caused by stress, and methamphetamine, which he consumed. And both of those things increase the heart rate. And this, again, requires more oxygen intake. And this, in combination with back compression, actually caused an inadequate oxygen intake. Now, if the restraint technique is fully legal, Chauvin is not responsible for Floyd's death. It's like if you scare, let's say, a person, and this person suddenly died because of heart attack. Although technically you caused this death, your action is not manslaughtering because under normal circumstances, scaring is not leading to heart attack. But let's return to the issue whether technique was legal or not a little bit later. Now the drug issue. Why Floyd can die because of fentanyl overdose? The prosecution invited an expert who argued the following. So basically when you take fentanyl, over the time it's processed by the body and it becomes a norfentanyl. And then you can measure the level of fentanyl and norfentanyl. Basically, if you just take the drug, you have a very high level of fentanyl and zero norfentanyl. And then over the time, your level of fentanyl going down and level of norfentanyl going up. So by the ratio of fentanyl and norfentanyl, you can kind of estimate when the drug was taken. And this expert told us that the drug was taken way earlier. And usually when you have an overdose, you take the drug and it's an immediate or almost immediate reaction. But then the defense told, like, what about if he took the drug a long time ago, but then took an additional drug, as the evidence suggests, right before the arrest? Wouldn't it be the same picture? And the expert confirmed, yeah, it could be. To clarify this, the defense asked Morris the drug dealer to come and testify under the immunity of the court, but the judge denied this. Then the expert said that the level of fentanyl is not really high, this is 11 units, and he argued that there are many people who were under DUI who had a much larger number of fentanyl in their blood, but still they were clearly alive. This is very manipulative, and they asked Dr. Baker, who performed the autopsy, about his opinion, and he said that in his practice there were many people who had much lower level of fentanyl in their blood and they were still considered as someone who died of overdose. And the most shocking statement from him, if there were no any video records, the autopsy would conclude that Floyd died of overdose. There were also many video experts from prosecution's side who argued that according to what they have seen on the video, it doesn't look like an overdose death, it looks like a lack of oxygen death, and they are 100% sure of this. Another version of Floyd's death is excited delirium, and it's very much aligned to the whole behavior of Floyd right before the arrest and during the arrest. They invited another expert who made a very unconvincing argument that excited delirium is not really a scientific term, and if it's scientific, that the person requires to be naked and be attracted to break some glasses. And if it's not present, this is not excited delirium. Very convincing. Now you might ask me, what about I can't breathe? Definitely Floyd said this multiple times. The problem here is that he started to scream "I can't breathe" when he was inside the police squad, way before Chauvin started to touch him. It was assumed by the policeman that he was simulating and basically tripping because there were nothing in the car which could prevent his breath. Moreover, the police trainer testified that in police they are being taught if the person can speak, he or she can breathe. And we can clearly see that Floyd was able to speak and scream before he was on the ground and after he was on the ground. And it's totally possible that Floyd had some issues with breathing on the second time, but how are the police supposed to know about that? Now let's return to the legality of the technique. They invited a bunch of different experts. Some of them said that, yeah, it's a part of the police program. Some of them said that it's not really part of the police program. There is also an argument that Minnesota police is allowed to improvise in their techniques. So the initial part of the procedure seems to be legit. Then there are many who argue that prone position is dangerous and they should put him on the side as soon as he passed out. The counter-argument was that the prone position is not usually dangerous and that the person might become even more aggressive as soon as he wakes up. And that's why they needed to hold him for such a long time. And another issue, that you had a crowd of aggressive bystanders who were threatening policemen and they were not able to react accordingly. You can see their intellectual faces on this body cam picture, and you can see this guy who was threatening to attack the police. One policeman fully confirmed that Chauvin's actions were adequate and within the police of Minnesota standard. Some other officers said that Chauvin's actions were okay, but he could have lifted his knee a bit earlier. And of course, prosecution invited a video expert who were manipulating the facts and basically said that the whole behavior was completely not okay. My summary is that Chauvin seems to act within the standard of the police of Minnesota. If he indeed caused the Floyd death, it means that Minnesota police standards can cause deaths sometimes, and they should be revised. And Derek Chauvin was not really aware of consequences of his actions. Floyd also could have died of fentanyl overdose or excited delirium. The prosecution showed that lack of oxygen is possible and probably more likely version than the other two, but it's not formally proven, especially considering the lack of any physical evidence of strangulation. Even if he died because of oxygen deficiency, you still have those underlying conditions related to heart and drug use. Unfortunately, we live in a new era when justice is being made by a team of diverse jury. Some of them are white, some of them are black, multiracial, but they're all 100% woke. The left was lying to us about George Floyd's death for the whole year, claiming that it was related to racism. And they haven't even mentioned this word in the whole 2-week trial. And when the trial started, I was happy because now everyone can see what's going on, that it's all basically a hoax, and that the prosecution arguments are basically falling apart. Think for a moment in what kind of world we are living. You have a dictator president of Russia who basically put in the jail Navalny, his rival, and we know that he did it. And when journalists asked him, why did you do this? Putin said, oh, we have a separate judicial system, I have no connection to this, it's like their decision. And in the same time, you have a democratically elected president, Joe Biden, and he's publicly arguing that Chauvin should be convicted and he's praying for this. Shame and disgrace. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye!